his retirement as Vice President after a long career that spanned more than 38 years at Home Federal. Sid has repeatedly insisted, as we talked about this party, that we should have fun tonight. And I think it's obvious from the start in the last hour that we are in fact starting to have fun. There will be a number of individuals this evening who will speak and will divulge some Purdy secrets and some stories that have been accumulated over the years. And these things have a way of expanding and getting a little bigger every time we tell them and every time we hear them. We'll probably lose control fairly early. In addition to the chaos from the stories, we have the bar will remain open throughout the evening, so anytime you feel so need of a drink, then you're more than welcome to go to the bar on the outside and refresh your drink. Over the years at Home Federal functions, we've always taken time to pause and to give thanks for our opportunities and our many successors. I would like to ask Dave Corner to come to the podium this evening to give our invocation.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, we heartily thank you for the 38 years of service to Home Federal by Sid Purdy. You have indeed blessed Sid during these 38 years. Because of his love for you, O Lord, and through his example, we as family and fellow workers have also been blessed. We thank you for watching over him and sustaining him through both the good times and the bad times. Now that he will be free from a daily schedule of work, help him to seize every opportunity to be a witness to your love and presence. We ask that you would grant unto him good health, happiness, and prosperity. Allow him to continue to be an example for all of us to follow in common sense, good judgment, and an understanding of the needs of his fellow man. We also ask, O Lord, your blessing upon this food which we are about to receive. May it be used to sustain us in service to you until life everlasting. Amen.
Thank you, David. I think our servers are ready now, so we'll reconvene in just a few minutes. And Carolyn?
Go ahead and start.
Go ahead and start.
Maybe I'll go ahead and start. That's a joke.
As I stated earlier, and it's no surprise to anyone, we're here tonight to honor Sid on his retirement after 38 years at Home Federal. This is a very special evening for Sid, and he's invited us to share this evening with him. Sid came to Home Federal on October the 24th, 1955 from McDonnell Aircraft. Prior to that, he had served in the Air Force from 1951 through sometime in 1955, I assume 4 years. Home Federal had one office and assets of less than $7 million. Sid has been a major factor. He's been with us for 38 years, and we've had growth to around $535 million. And Sid has been a major factor in achieving this growth. Matter of fact, I would add a successful growth. Sid's first position, and this is his own descriptive language, he was a loan clerk who did everything. And you have to visualize back, when was this? 1955, that we had, and this was before I can even remember almost, but at least before I knew anything about Home Federal. And I've seen pictures, but evidently this was a small office down on Woodson Road across from the bank, what we would refer to as a small storefront, and very few employees. And Sid said there were 2 Indians in that department, and he was not the chief. In this position, having to do everything, and that would include dispersing and escrows and all of those things now that are segregated by departments, Sid gained valuable experience that would help him throughout his entire career with Home Federal. And as things became more complex, as our business came as we became busier and bigger, Sid was able to cope with those things because of his vast background and his experience. Early in his career, Sid learned the value of customer service and fairness. These are traits that he instilled in the people that he trained over the years, and those are traits that he still follows today in his everyday work at Home Federal. We have a loan committee, Dan, Sneed, and I, and Sid, and frequently Sid's got a problem there, and we need to do this because it's just not fair to the customer. And I think that's an important part of our heritage, and Sid has been a big part of it. Sid was also fair to Home Federal. Sid always had a philosophy: if there was a job to do, you just pitched in to get it done. It didn't make any difference if it was somebody else's job. If it was his job, he'd ask for help if he needed it, but he was always there and was always trying to be fair to his fellow employees and also to Home Federal as a company. Sid progressed through the ranks and was promoted to St. Charles branch manager in 1965. And for those of you that are there at Home Federal now, that was a unique position as compared to a branch manager today. Our branch managers today are primarily responsible for retail savings. Sid's responsibility was to go to St. Charles, which was a savings branch, but also to install and to develop a loan origination and construction dispersing department. So Sid had the responsibility not only of running a retail savings branch, but also of developing and promoting our lending department in St. Charles County. We went on to become one of the more successful lenders in St. Charles County, and primarily because of the groundwork and the efforts of Sid Purdy. In a conversation recently, and I don't even remember who it was with, the comment was, at one time, Sid Purdy probably knew 80% of the people that lived in St. Charles County, and I would imagine that's true. In 1966, Sid was appointed vice president. 1983, Sid returned to the home office at Bellerive and has been responsible for loan originations, real estate owned, processing, mainly those functions that have to deal with the mortgage loan department. Sid has served as secretary to the executive committee. He's worked directly with the board of directors on loan approvals. Prior to about 3 years ago, the loan committee met every Tuesday, and Sid would review and present those loans to the loan committee, which was comprised of the board of directors. So he's had a very good relationship with that group throughout his entire career. All work, as we all know, and no play makes for a dull life. And most of you know that Home Federal has been and still remains, at least for another week, a fun place to work. Sid has always been a ringleader in promoting those fun things, and we've had a number of them at work, from Christmas parties to, there's a couple of pictures here, I think, of some tree trimming parties, and we only brought the pictures from early in the evening, not late in the evening. But Sid was always instrumental in those. If he didn't organize them, he carried the load during the party. We participated in where's Laverne, our infamous stag parties for a number of years until we had to require equal treatment, and then we quit having stag parties. Operations committee met on Monday nights for a number of years, and we always did more business up at the Creve Coeur Inn after the operations committee was really more fruitful, and probably got more problems solved than we ever did in the operations committee. And I guess talking about infamous, I can remember being at Home Federal for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and all these guys were going out on Friday night, and nobody invited me, and my feelings were extremely hurt. But about the fourth night, Sid asked me if I'd like to join the guys for a beer, and then I found out all those things that had been going on Friday nights, and I guess went on for a number of nights after that. And I'm sure all of us, well, I only speak for myself, but had some long Friday nights and had a few problems at home. Not only the Home Federal activities, but Sid's also been a ringleader in our non-Home Federal activities. He's the boss of our deer camp, and most all of you know about the deer camp. I'm sure Sid's relatives have heard about it and know about it. And Doris, where are you at, Doris? There you are. I've been advised to put you on notice that there's absolutely no reason why Sid can't go up on Monday, open deer camp, have it all cleaned up and ready for us on Friday. That's okay with you.
We'll see. If he gets his other work done.
At a number of Home Federal retirement parties, we have solicited comments from various individuals, friends, coworkers, and so forth. I think we started this with Ralph's retirement party a number of years ago, and we did the same thing. These are only excerpts, just thoughts, maybe some advice from friends. I'd like to read a few of those. I think it's appropriate, and they apply to Sid very directly. We have valued your friendship. I have thoroughly enjoyed the time we spent together at Home Federal. Your participation has been a key component of Home Federal's success. You have touched so many with your wisdom. This is the beginning of a positive time in your life when you can now learn how to play liar's poker. We all know the golden rule. You taught me how to apply it. We know Doris will enjoy having you underfoot. Don't worry about the traffic. Just roll over and sleep a little longer. You have your health and your family. Good luck, and I will miss you. You have assisted thousands of people who own homes because of your efforts and your caring. Your friendship is one of my most valued treasures. In a few months, you'll wonder how you ever found time to work. That must have come from someone who's retired. Retirement is freedom you never had before. Sid, I think you do have reason to be proud of your successful career, your family, and your friends. We have all learned a lot from you, and you have earned our respect and our friendship. I think I have probably said more than I should about some of these things, because I still have to go home and talk about Friday nights. Some references have been made to regarding your character and your ability, or maybe your inability to do some things, such as horseshoe pitching, poker, liar's poker, washers, those types of things. One of your co-workers and one of the Montgomery County landlords, land barons if you would, has a few words to say. For those of you who do not know, Stu Rayfield has been associated with Home Federal. He's been the president of Home Agency for 22 years. He's also been a very close friend of Sid for 22 years. Stu?
I'll be up in a minute.
You scared?
Gosh,
As Bernie said earlier, this is going to be an informal evening, right? And Bernie, those are a lot of, hello, are we on? Can you hear this back there? Sure. Hello, 1, 2, 3. I'm on.
This one right here, no, but you're a natural, Stu.
This is a fall down comedian, not a stand up comedian. Are you ready? I'll try it again. Those were a lot of nice things he said about you, Sid. Are they really true? We've got to make a change here. Excuse me just a minute. We've got to make a change.
Stu?
Come on, Doris. Bring it. I'll get your ashtray. It's all right. Come on, Sid. I tell you what, more people want to see you from the front. You're way over here on the side. We're going to do a little show.
There you go, yeah.
Come on, Sid.
You might as well make a roast
Come on,
out of
Sid.
it.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Let me take this one if I might.
All we need is Foster Brooks.
As I said, we're going to be very informal this evening. That's what we're trying to do. Come on, Sid. You're right over here. Get over here. Is this working yet, Bernie, or not?
No.
The
other one is.
Well, Sydney, I am glad to be a part of this evening with you and Doris. And Bernie's right, it's almost 23 years we've known each other. And I do have a little story about my first really outing with you. And I immediately found out what kind of a guy you were, that you were a unique kind of guy, very unique. Sometime the middle of 1971, I had a poker party in my house, 2 tables, as I remember. I apologize to the non-poker players here because you won't understand this at all. But I had 2 tables of poker at my house and just beginning to learn some of the fellows in this room, and particularly Sid and so forth. And right out of the blue, Sidney turns a game, a good old-fashioned poker game, a 7-card stud, into a game called Spades Wild. All Spades Wild. Can you imagine such a thing? I damn near left my own house. I couldn't believe it. But he's done it again in 1994, too. We tried it one time, didn't we, Sidney? You are a character, I tell you for sure. You know, Sid has been a true success to himself and to his friends in several ways. But, you know, Sid was born in a very small town in southern Arkansas, Gillette by name. And several of us in this room are born in small towns, and we love them. But just to give you an idea of one of Sid's success factors is that Sid now owns property in 3 counties in Missouri that I know of. I don't know what else he might own, but he owns property in 3 counties in Missouri. And let me tell you, Sid is a land baron, and the amount of acreage he owns in these 3 counties is bigger than the town he was born in. Now I ask you, is that a measurement of success or not, huh? Yeah, I think it is. He's a land baron for sure. What I don't understand about Sid, though, is how a person that spent his early childhood in Arkansas, moving on to Missouri at still a young age, could be such a damn poor fisherman. I've never understood this. If you're in Arkansas, you learn to fish. What else do you do?
President.
Well, Sidney, bear with me. For your retirement, Sidney, here is a Roland Martin tale of bass tails, a tape for you to use to learn more about it. And if you can't do it yourself, you'll see how the pros do it. All right? Well, I want you to have that. Sidney has been blessed the last 3 or 4 years to, thank you very much, has been blessed the last 3 or 4 years to have ended up in a boat with 2 other gentlemen that are in this room that shall remain nameless that can't catch fish. I don't know what it is, but Sid's working at it, and now you're going to have a lot more time to do it, right, Sidney? Okay. Are we on now?
Yeah, you're on. Live.
I like moving around better. Thank you very much. Okay. You know, Sid, as Bernie said, goes back a long way with Home Federal. Sort of an old story, but just to give you an idea how you young kids in this room, Doug and Steve, won't know this, but when your dad started at Home Federal, they were still making Xerox copies by hand. And that's exactly what was going on. That's right. You know, I'm not going to say a lot about his career at Home Federal. It's been great, self-evident. Bernie said a lot about it tonight. I'm sure you'll hear a few more comments about that. But I've got to tell you all, the last, I'd say 2 months, since Sid made this monumental decision to retire, it's been sort of a comic around there. When I'm at my desk, if I'm with a customer, Sid walks by the outside of my door, he just got a big grin, just sort of walking like that. And if I'm at my desk, working on something, he'll walk in. He may stay for a cup of coffee, if invited, but he'll just sort of walk around the desk and smile, just big old yes-eating grin, as we used to say, on his face. But I can tell you what, he's one happy man who made that decision, that's for sure. Well, Bernie mentioned Herman, and Herman is near and dear to many of us, that's for sure. And Sid is one heck of a good hunter. And out of all the group of us that hunt up there, I can tell you for sure that Sid is in the top 10 of ability, that's for sure. No doubt about it. You all have to, some of you outsiders don't know that whole story, but anyway. But I got to tell you one more thing about Herman, at least one more thing. Doris, I really understand what you're going through. For almost 20 years at Herman, I've had the upper bunk and Sid's had the lower bunk. Sid is a master at this snoring ability, let me tell you. when he starts cutting them Z's, he really does it in masterful shape. I'm sure you've lived him a few nights during the last few years. That's right. Well, let's see what else we might have in here. Sydney can win several awards, and this is not an engraved plaque, but one of the things that Sydney would be the champion of is being Mr. Pittler. No doubt about it. Championship, Sid, Purdy, Mr. Pittler. And this doesn't have a damn thing to do with piddling around, other than when you want to stop, you can hang the old Jack Daniels number 7 sign on the door and stop and just take a big sip of that, okay? Please do that. And Mr. Clean, let me tell you, is he Mr. Clean? Once in a while, if I have to, I get on the sink up there, clean the dishes, which is not very often. But when I do it, and when anybody else does it, and we think they're clean and put away, guess what Sydney does? Comes in and washes them again. You must really be afraid of your stomach. I don't quite understand that, but that's something else. And Sydney, speaking of Herman, Norman, I do want to give you something here if I can find it. Oh, yes. Here's a little book of your own treasure chest of several years of memories of Herman, okay? So I hope you enjoy that. And let's see here, what else do we have? Well, I'm going to have a little bit of seriousness, but I do want to give you one more thing. God, this is ugly. But I said earlier that you were a unique guy. And this, it says right here, professionally printed, this garment is as unique as you are. It has been individually painted, so no two are alike. And it's from one of your favorite stores, Bass Pro. I can sit wear that or not. I mean, look at that. That should also help your fishing ability. Listen, I'll try to be a little serious now, Sid. Sid really is one of those rare individuals that everybody likes. That can't be said about many of us. He has a lot of unique qualities. I think back when Norma, my wife, met Sid in the early 80s, I remember her saying that Sid is extremely genuine person and down to earth. And I can tell you the two of them became immediate friends. Sid, as John Swift said, I'm quoting him, may you live all the days of your life. And one other thing, Doris, another toast would be, is that a good wife and health are a man's best wealth. And Sid has both, and I hope he keeps both a long time. One more thing, and I'm out of here. Sydney, your friends at home, I'm back on the table again. Sort of fun down here, might have go to sleep. There's a fellow in this room, your brother-in-law, Tim, that wants you to play golf with him. So your friends at Home Insurance Agency have a little something that you might want to carry your clubs in. And I will tell you, Sid, that if that's not the type or the color you want, they will trade it in here at the pro shop. Okay? So, congratulations, partner. Yours can carry that okay. That'll work pretty good. That's somewhat light.
It's so lighter than what he's got.
Bernie, I think I'm ready to turn this back to you.
Don't let her drive the cart.
You want this on?
Don't let her drive the cart.
Is this one back on? Okay, that's what we're on. Thank you, Stu. You fellows and ladies that follow are going to have a tough act to follow, so I hope you've been taking notes. Sid, I don't think your evening would be complete in listening to all these stories if we did not hear from your lunch partner, your buddy, your partner in crime, if you will, Mark Hemmersmeyer. Mark?
They know him down at Schnucks.
I think I'll use this one. Sid, Doris, members of the Purdy family, honored guests. Doris has a trash bag between your legs down. I didn't know there was the same thing up there. Excuse me. Mark, hey, Mark,
Can you stand up?
Know anything about that, Sid? What, that trash bag? Trash bag stuff there. I didn't know he knew it.
That's our adopted son. I think is it orange or
Probably some proxies in there. I guess I'd like to take everybody back nearly 22 years. I was the new guy at Home Federal and sort of a management trainee and a swing man, and I was assigned to the St. Charles office to work. I was filling in for a Mr. Kuhlman, who was again on vacation. And I told my dad that I was working for Sid Purdy that week, and with that, Dad really perked up. And he said, he may be tall, he may be skinny, he may have red hair, but he can sure pitch horseshoes. And with that, I really knew what I was up against to go out there. And Sid, here. From Brian and Teddy, I got these set of play horseshoes for you.
They won't be too heavy.
I was going to get them a real set, but since most of your friends will be working, I figured there isn't much left for you to play with. Maybe Jason, I guess Ryan's probably too young, and Ashley and Julie and Jessica are probably already in school, so Joe is too busy, and Ralph's really not retired yet, so most of the rest of us are all working. I worked that week for Sid out in St. Charles and filling in for Mr. Kuhlman, and you have to do the daily summary sheets and tally up all the numbers and all that stuff, and I did that, and he turned the work in to the manager at the end of the day, and I did that, and a little while later, Sid's sitting at his desk, and with that big, long, skinny finger, he called me over, and sure enough, he caught a mistake. He called me on it. He nailed me. Dougie, you've probably been nailed a few times by this. And brought something up about the training I might have had at the home office. Didn't do it right. Raised the question about my having some college. But he nailed me pretty good on that tally sheet that I did. And he liked to nail people. Just the other night when we were playing poker, 3 of a kind to win, draw poker. The game was about over. I announced my hand. I had 3 conkers, and I laid them out there. And the losers started pushing, and I started raking the pot into my pile, and all of a sudden Sid speaks up, 3 bulldogs, what are you doing here? And he didn't let me forget about those 3 conkers the rest of the night. I remembered later on that week, Sid invited me to lunch. And he said the first time I pay, all the following times it's a Dutch treat. Remember that, Sid? You know where you took me to lunch? He took me to Brops. Remember Brops out there? Yeah, Brops. Well, Brops always has a nice big buffet and really good fried chicken. And we went down there and filled up on the buffet and all the fried chicken that you could eat. And he paid that time. And from then on, it was Dutch. And now we go to lunch almost every day, frequently to Schnucks. We've got the big buffet, the fried chicken. We order the exact same thing. We get coffee and water, the buffet order, but Sid always makes it perfectly clear to that waitress
We want separate checks. I guess we probably talk about the same things at lunch. We always start talking about loans. I'm not in the loan department, but he brings me up to date on everything that's going on in the loan department and answers my questions about Home Federal's loans and our big loans and our problem loans. And then the conversation usually turns to stock. And Sid tells me about loans, and I try to tell him about stock. And I've taught a lot about stock to Sid and ESOP and options and stock and whatnot. And just when I think he's getting it, he goes home and he talks to Doris. He comes back the next day, and I can tell he's confused. She's got him confused. But we talk about more than that. We always talk about our family. He's very proud of his family, his daughter and sons and grandchildren, and myself, Debbie, and my kids and whatnot. But we always end up the conversations talking about our wives. But I guess the things that we say about our wives, I really can't say here. We can't talk about it, I guess is what we say. We can't talk about it. But Doris, I just want you to know that if things don't work out for me at Roosevelt, I'm getting one of those 900 numbers, and I'm going to tell all that anybody wants to hear. I remember, Charlie, before my vacation, I was probably worrying about what I was going to talk about tonight, and Sid shows me this long gardening list. I mean, he must have had about 10 or 15 things on that list that he was going to plant, garden in his retirement. And what is in my next list? And then there's this gentleman that came in Chinooks. We don't see too many of these types in Chinooks, but he had this big old pair of bib overalls on. So Debbie went out to the Walmart store, Wally Mart. I know Sid and Doris think a lot of the Wally Mart store. Debbie got you this pair of overalls here, bib overalls. I think they're your size. It's a 40 waist and a 34 inseam.
She probably bought those
Yeah.
because that's your waist, right?
Right. And I think that Bass Pro Shop shirt that Stu gave you will look real good on you. But what Sid actually said that day is this guy came in these bib overalls and he said, Mark, what I ought to do is get me about 3 pairs of those for retirement, and that's all I'd have to wear. And, I thought you'd look good in those and enjoy it and be comfortable and whatnot. Let's see. I think one of the reasons Sid and I got along so well at Home Federal is he doesn't work for me and I don't work for him. So I know as Bernie is already done, and Ralph would do if he were here, and I'm sure Dan will have this included in his remarks, and Joe and his, they'll certainly expound on the many merits of your duties and the contributions that you made to Home Federal, so I really won't even go into that. Bernie talked about the Creve Coeur Inn earlier, and one little story I remember, after one of those operations committee meetings, we were down there, and after you have a few pitchers of beer, when you start getting serious, you split a beer, getting ready to go home, but there's 4 of you still sitting there, and Bernie will want to split a beer, or Sid will want to split a beer, and keep staying there. And I think that night it was Bernie and I and Sid and Milton, and we went around the table, and I think we started talking with me, and talking about Mark and the good job that he does at Home Federal, and how he gets along with the people that work for him. You remember that story, Sid? And talked about what a good job I did, and I guess mainly what a nice guy I am. And we all agreed that I am a nice guy. And then we'd go around the table and we'd start talking about Bernie. And Bernie does a good job, gets along well with the people that works for him, and go on, and we'd split another beer, and we'd all agree that Bernie is a nice guy. And get around to Milton, and we talked about Milton, and the good job that he does, and the DP department, and how well he gets along with everybody, and sure enough, we all agree that Milton is really a nice guy. And I think we split another beer and went around the table again. Started with Mark, talked about Bernie again, talked about Milton again, and we probably did that 3 or 4 times. And the next morning, Sid comes into work, And I know he said this to me, and I'm sure he said it to Bernie. Bernie, you remember that? He says, you know, last night we talked all night about what a nice guy everybody was. And I agreed every time. But never once did anybody say what a nice guy I am. So, anyway. Now, is that a true story or not?
That's true.
That's a true story. Okay. So, anyway. Well, another gift. Sid, I think he knew what I was up to. I took this picture. Isn't that a nice picture? Sid Purdy. This is a picture I took very recently. Before I went to lunch, before I went on vacation, I told Sid I had to use up, before lunch, I had to use up some film. Debbie wanted to get the roll developed or something like that. This is a picture of Sid Purdy at 11:30. This could be 11:30 any day of the week at Home Federal. He's rushing out to lunch. You can see as usual, he is in a hurry to get to lunch, and I'm already waiting in my car. Waiting for lunch Sid to go to lunch.
You going to Daryl's?
Schnucks. And we have an hour, and I think most times we're back in about an hour, hour and 10 minutes. A little bit. But, Sid Purdy going to lunch.
That's great, Mark.
Sid, this is from me.
Yeah. You want to hang it in your office?
Okay, thank you.
When he does drive off without you.
Yeah.
And I have another picture, but this one is for Doris. Doggone, look at this picture. That is, I thought she'd be proud of this.
Oh, yeah.
He really looks nice, doesn't he? This is a picture of Sid Purdy standing in his office. Very, very nice, very reverent, very happy, very proud man.
Very professional looking.
Let's see, I forgot my notes here.
Very something.
Very nice. Very, very.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, what this reminds me of, and this is a true story, Sid, you know, was brought up in that Lutheran's orphans home and whatnot. And when he was going to high school, he told me, I think from the remarks that Stu and Bernie made earlier, you know, he's a very honest and very sincere person. But he told me one day that he and his buddy in high school, they tested, I guess that career testing that they do, you know, he tested very well to become a Lutheran minister. Yeah. So that picture reminds me of that. Unfortunately, that buddy of his, he got sick, and I think he kind of got cold feet or backed out or whatnot. He died. Well, I think Sid would have made a very good minister. And this picture kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Don't sugarcoat it.
And this reminds me of another story. This is a true story. Sid told me one time he was closing a loan, and in that same, you know, minister type tone that he has about him, very honest, very thorough, whatnot. He was closing a loan for two ladies. Remember those two women? He was closing that loan for two women, and Sid was explaining everything to them very thoroughly, very honestly, and whatnot. That one gal, she was pretty sharp. She looked him square in the eye and said, "You wouldn't shit me now, Radar, would you?" This picture also reminds me of Radar. I guess the last thing is maybe when people get ready to retire, you always want to give them a little advice. And if I could give Sid and Doris any advice, I guess I'd just like to say that at the breakfast table every morning, I hope you don't sit back and, you know, read the newspaper, complain about everything that's going on in the world, that things aren't the way they used to be, and you know, just being disgusted with everything, and don't talk about people. Don't be running people down, complaining about other people and talking about them. I'd like to advise you to have a positive attitude about everything. Do things to make a difference, and I certainly know you will. And Doris, I know that a woman takes a man for better or for worse, but not for lunch. And I want you to know that I'm turning him over to you for lunch, and I hope you enjoy his company as much as I have, and you can have him for that hour and 15 minutes, and be thinking of me at Roosevelt. I'll only be getting 45 minutes. In conclusion, I guess I'd like to refer back to one of my pictures. I'd just like to say that
Sid Purdy, he may be tall, he may have a big belly, he may have this thinning red hair, balding red hair, but he sure is a nice guy, Sid Purdy.
Thank you, Mark. For those of you who do not know, these two are famous for going to lunch together. You can set your clock or your watch at 11:30 every day, and if they're not going, they're already gone. You can also set your clock anytime after 1 to 1:30, and they're coming back. And we're not going to get the opportunity because who knows when Mark might retire from Roosevelt. So, Sid, I'm going to retaliate just a little bit for you on one shot. Mark and Sid, as I say, go to lunch every day together. Mark was on vacation in Florida. He came back 8:30 in the morning, 25 minutes after 10, and our secretary's name is Melissa, and he finally calls her Missy. 25 after 10, he says, "Missy, I'm going to lunch." I yelled from the inside and said, "What in the hell are you going to do?" And he said, "I'm going to lunch. It's 11:30. Well, he hadn't set his time back. And then one other quickie story on the two of them. They do, as we say, go to lunch every day together. A few months ago, Mark stopped by Sid's office and said, "Sid, I'll get the car and pick you up at the door." This was in the wintertime, Sid gets his coat and there's no Mark. Mark had proceeded to drive out of the parking lot, preoccupied, out of the subdivision where our office is at, and was up Olive Street Road before he thought about it. And then I heard something mentioned earlier about, are you going to Darrell's? They've been known to get in the car in our parking lot and drive 100 feet to Darrell's. Just one other quickie comment, observing some comments that have been made in the last few days. Doris said when she's around Mark, it's like having another son. And Mark said, that Doris sure is a handful. Dave Corner, who's been a friend of Sid since his childhood, will be our next speaker. David? David is also an assistant vice president at Home Federal, has been there, I didn't mark the time, but around 20 years, David?
Yeah. Got a couple portraits here I want to share with everybody. The first one is called Before. Pass this around. The second one's called After. I was fortunate enough to start working for Sid Purdy in 1972. So he had been at the St. Charles branch office of Home Federal about 7 years in, Sid? Something like that. And as was customary, Sid always would take a new employee around and introduce him to all the other employees in the office and give us a little tour of the office. And this tour included going upstairs behind the teller line, and actually he took me into the walk-in vault at the St. Charles office. And being young and new, never been inside a vault of a bank before, and was wanting to see all the money that was piled up. Well, there wasn't a lot of money, but I couldn't help but notice on the wall inside the vault was all these dates written in with a pencil. And the dates would have a beginning date and an ending date. And as first day employee there, I really didn't want to ask too many questions, being a little bit bashful, but as time went by, I finally got up enough nerve to ask around, what are all these dates on the wall? And these were in columns, and Some of the dates would be just one day in duration, some of them be a couple weeks in duration, some of them be a couple months in duration. And finally, when I asked what all these dates were, they told me, well, Sid Purdy would write a date on the wall when he tried to quit smoking. And then an employee would write the second date on the wall when they caught him down in the kitchen or the bathroom sneaking a smoke, so they knew he didn't make it. Took him a long time to give that up, but he finally did. Another thing, Mr. Fassel used to come out to the offices and make his regular visits, and he always made sure he went around and introduced and said hello to everybody, all the employees. And he also would kind of do a site inspection of the office and make sure everything was shipshape, and that included going into the kitchen. And we always had a clean kitchen at the St. Charles branch office. I don't think Mr. Fassel really knew how come that kitchen was so clean. About 4 o'clock every day, Sid would mosey on down from upstairs down to downstairs, and you have to have been in the St. Charles branch office. Downstairs had been remodeled, and there was a kitchen down there, and also the loan department was down there. And I worked with a lady by the name of Mary Klasman, and so we would always see anybody who happened to walk down the stairs into the kitchen. And pretty soon, after Sid had come down, we'd start hearing the refrigerator door opening up, and we'd hear the ruffle of paper bags, and we'd start hearing the kitchen cabinets opening up, and didn't quite know what was going on. But at the end of the day, people would come down to get their lunches, and lo and behold, there wouldn't be nothing there. If you had a leftover sandwich, if you had a bag of crackers for your soup, if you had a candy bar that was left over, it was gone. Sid liked to snack a little bit. Another one of the favorite things that happened when I was working for Sid is he used to sit down in the loan department every once in a while, and Mary was really good at this, at getting him to talk about his life growing up at the Lutheran Orphan Home in Des Peres. And he certainly had some good stories to tell us about his experiences. All those stories were all very pleasant stories. Probably most people think growing up in an orphan home wouldn't be too good of an experience, but he had a very good experience, I believe, growing up in the orphan home, him and his brothers. One of the things I think that Sid learned at the orphan home is he learned how to be a quick thinker. And that shown in his years at Home Federal. Whenever there'd be a conversation going on among several people, Sid always had an ability to come up with a comment or some way of making a humorous gesture out of whatever we happen to be talking about. And certainly Sid has a very good sense of humor. And I think he learned that from the orphan home. Probably a lot of times if there's something ever went wrong, he had to learn how to come up with a quick response to how he wasn't guilty for that particular. He also learned how to treat people with respect, and several of our other speakers here have alluded to that, and it's just a well-documented fact at Home Federal that there probably was nobody better at Home Federal than Sid when it came to contact with the customer. He just had a way about him of instilling confidence so that people came away thinking that they had been treated fairly and with the best construction on their business dealings with Home Federal. Sid also learned, I think, at the orphan home to give out nicknames to people. Everybody had a nickname if you were there very long. And I'm going to give you a few nicknames, and most of those people are here in the room. You might try and pick them out. Big Ralph, JT, Byrne, I don't know if you remember this one or not, Curly, Hemmers, That Blonde, Bones, remember Bones? Doherty, Washmo, Van Druzel, and this one didn't take a lot of imagination, but I always kind of liked it, Coiners. I think last thing I want to say is another thing that happened to Sid, I think maybe through the orphan home, is through his Lutheran upbringing, they probably led him to go to Lutheran High School. And Lutheran High School is where Sid met Doris Kleinstuber. And probably one of the smartest things that Sid ever did, if not the smartest thing he ever did, was marry that girl, Doris Kleinstuber. You agree with that, Doris? Doris was brought up with a very strong Lutheran upbringing. And Doris, I don't know if you've probably not heard this often enough, but there's been many times when I've heard Sid say that Doris was the person in his family that had the level head, that had the ability to think things through, and always to keep him on the straight and narrow path. So in closing, I just want to say thank you to Doris for keeping Sid on the straight and narrow path during this past 38 years. And let's see, I've got a little something for you too, Sid. Christy and Jerry.
What are you straddling, Darty? What are you straddling now?
This is something to go with those overalls and that real nice shirt that Stu gave you.
Okay, thank you.
You gonna open that, Sid?
I don't know.
Well, while Sid opens it, someone alluded earlier to a certain boat that has difficulty catching fish, and that looks somewhat like it might be some help. Dave has the distinction of being another party to that boat that doesn't catch any fish. A few years ago, we were down Taneycomo, and Stu and I and a fellow that many of you know by the name of John Schutte fished together, and Mark and Dave and Sid fished together. And we were out having breakfast the next morning, and the lady wanted to know how fishing was going, and John and Stu and I were out there early, and we told her we had great luck. And we said, but our buddies aren't having any luck catching fish. So she proceeds to go over to the other table and doesn't even say, what do you want, or do you want coffee? She says, I don't know why you guys aren't catching fish on this lake, everybody else is. It's been suggested that we take a 5-minute break to just take a break and get another drink if you like. 5 minutes and we'll start again. Norma requested this break.
Of us who go to lunch with Sid and Mark is it's embarrassing as hell, frankly, because they get a $15 bill and they leave 35 cents. So we've tried to teach them to no avail, but I caution Sid, you might want to come up and take a look at this if you would. You see, this column on the left, the gray area here, that says check. So whatever your check is, and that's usually the number at the bottom of the thing. And then it says 15%. I know you haven't really arrived at these numbers very often, but 15%. You can ignore this 20% column. And of course you will. But why don't you take that? It's pretty handy. It might not be a bad idea to share with Mark. I have one more thing. Don't go away now. This is from a group of your friends. This is a set of 4 woods. This is a card, so it'll tell you who all participated in this. Guaranteed to take the slice, the hook, the water out of your game.
Why go out?
What do you do tomorrow?
That's great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Sid, these golf clubs that you've just received, I'm sure do not have how-to instructions. And so you can probably get started off with a proper technique because, as Dan said, we've played together before and we could probably all use some help, but probably you in particular. I have a couple of secrets to share and a couple of techniques. And you got to listen to this closely because it's extremely important. You keep your eyes on the back of the ball and don't move your head until the ball is gone, and keep your grip real tight like you're holding a tube of toothpaste with the cap off. Make a full shoulder turn, but don't forget to turn your hips and get the left knee behind the ball and the left heel off the ground. On the way back down, don't grab the club with your right hand and throw your right shoulder and arm at the ball, or you'll come over the top and hit something ugly. Start your downswing with your left knee, plant the left heel and turn your hips toward the direction of the shot and keep your head still. Don't let your shoulders pass your chin until the ball is gone past your left ear. Make a good swing, inside out, full extension of the arms, a big arc. Don't try to bash the ball. Just swing, and the club will do the work. And don't forget to relax. But more appropriately, you could probably just use Sneed's advice, swing hard as hell in case you hit it. And Sid, as pretty as those golf clubs are, I'm sure they're not going to help you too much. You're probably going to lose a lot of balls. So to get you started, these are the real things. Those aren't tricks. Those are sort of, may become a collector's item. Another week they'll be obsolete.
Are they floaters?
They're not floaters. They say Home Federal Savings Bank bonds.
It's swimmers.
We've talked a lot about
They go to the far
your
side.
close friends, your co-workers, and ethics and friendship. Our next toaster, so to speak, is one of those close friends and was your co-worker for 30 years. I'm sure you learned a lot about ethics, about customer service from him. And as your friend, we all know that he was a partner, or at least a co-partner, in those late Friday evenings. Again, for those of you who do not know, Joe Tucker was a senior vice president at Home Federal. He was there for 30 years. He was also a director of Home Federal. And he retired approximately 7 years ago. Joe, we're pleased to bring you out of retirement for this special event.
Hey, Denise, did you bring your truck?
You can't afford it.
I mean, to take the stuff home.
My house.
Well, what's happened up here tonight, I kind of feel like the janitor that has to clean up after the party's over. And I am a senior citizen, and you've got to let me look at my notes. Because I've been afflicted with a disease known as CRS. And I can't really tell you up here tonight what that's all about, but if you really want to know what it is, ask Stu, he'll explain it to you. And I want to take exception to a remark that Bernie made at the beginning of the evening when he said that most of the stuff you hear up here tonight won't be the truth. But I want you to know I do nothing but tell the truth. Getting on with Sidney, he's a Korean War veteran, and he was in the Air Force. And he took flight training. He was trained on a Remington one-seater. It was a Remington typewriter. But anyway, in Japan, he ran a golf course. I don't know if he got, did you get combat pay for doing that, Sid? What a way to fight a war. And you know, when you hear about that, it's easy to understand why we had a tough time fighting wars over in the Far East, because all the flyboys were on the golf course. But I think, you know, Sid was always afraid to fly, and I can't understand that with the flight training he had on that Remington. But we went he went to Hawaii with Dottie and I, and I counted the times we went up and down. It was 10 times. And I don't know if Sid said the same prayer each time or whether he wrote a new prayer each time we went up. But anyway, I got to know Sid. He started Home Federal about a year before I did. When I met him, he was a skinny redhead. We've been good friends 37 years, and I don't think we ever had a crossword with each other. And you can look at Sid. He was skinny then, but you can see now he's fairly well fed. And it looks like he has been eating high on the hog. But when you take a good look, I think he's been eating all over the hog. And his wife said, his wife said tonight that she's got 1.5 times more husband now than she had when they met. Oh well. I guess about the first Friday night that I worked for Home Federal, Sid and Ralph apparently had been drinking beer on Friday nights, and they asked me if I wanted to have a beer with them, and I said, sure. We went over to Bud Roberts' bar. It was over on Blackman Road right there at Woodson. And this guy hated Anheuser-Busch with a passion. It was so bad that you could not buy a Bud in that place. So anyway, we drank beer there for a while, and we finally wound up over at Jody's. That's a bar and a restaurant that's a cocktail lounge and a restaurant right close to where Orton's funeral parlor is. There were two guys that ran that, Fred Armando and Joe Lombardo, and I think one or both of them finally wound up in jail. They lost arguments with the Internal Revenue. But anyway, it got to be a common thing over there. We would trade ties. And I don't know where Sid got his ties from, but they must have been 30 years old. He always had the worst ties of anybody in the place. And for some unknown reason, I always wound up with his ties. So I would take him and give him to Goodwill, and about 2 or 3 weeks later, he had the same tie back. But anyway, it seemed like either Sid or I were always in the doghouse about these Friday nights, and we kind of needed each other, because if I got in late, Donnie blamed Sid, and if he got in late, Doris blamed me, so we kind of had to help each other out. But one night, I guess it must have been probably the first or second night that Bernie had beer with us down at Jody's, and Sid was running late, and he said, I got to call Doris, so she can be mad as a devil. So Bernie, he had a few beers. He said, oh, I'll call her. I said, no, don't you do it. She'll get mad. Bernie insisted on calling her. What's your phone number? And Sid gave him the phone number. And Bernie called up Doris. Well, it wound up, Bernie had 2 minutes of hell and Sid had 2 weeks of hell. And one Friday night on our way home, I fell asleep and I got home about 4 o'clock. And in the meantime, Dottie got concerned and she calls Sid's house, and Doris answered the phone, and she asked Doris if Sid was home. And Doris says, no, he's not. About a minute later, Doris calls Dot back and says, yes, Sid is home, he's in bed. And she didn't know it. So Monday, Sid said, boy, of all the luck, he said, I've been practicing for years to sneak in the house and get in bed without Doris knowing it. First time I get away with it, this has to happen. And I'm going to show you what kind of law-abiding citizen Sid is. We were hunting turkeys. This place is up here that they show on here. We were hunting turkeys, quite a few years ago. And back in those days, it was against the law to shoot a hen turkey. Lo and behold, Sid shoots a hen turkey. So he brings it up to the cabin, plucks the feathers off, dresses it, wraps it up in aluminum foil, throws it in a barbecue pit, and he roasts it. So we all eat the turkey. So here's a case of violating the law and destroying the evidence. Well, enough of that stuff. I looked at the Ouija board this morning and I said, hey, what do you know about Sidney? And it said, Sid is a loyal, dedicated worker. We all know him as that. And Sid knows the business, the real estate lending business. And I was often amazed at how much he knew about the legal aspects of real estate ownership and lending. And Sid was always been a level-headed individual. Somebody accused his wife of that, so they make a good pair. And Sid always reasoned things out. He was not a compulsive actor. He always reasoned things out, tried to took the best route. And you could always expect good, worthy advice if you talked to Sid and asked him what he thought. And Sid is not a person that's excitable. I don't think I ever saw him really excited, except maybe once in a while when he won $5 playing poker. But normally he was very a level-headed, cool individual. And Sid's easy to get along with. We never did have a bad word that I could ever recall. Sid's always had a good sense of humor. He likes to tell jokes, tell stories, and I don't know, he has a knack of insulting you with grace, and that's hard to do. And Sid never did meet a stranger. He can walk up to anybody and hold a conversation, make them feel good. And he's a highly competitive person. When you get involved in sports, cards, anything you want to play, Sid's a very competitive person. He's always a person who's willing to help anybody in distress. So Sid, advice in your retirement, you're going to have to answer to a new boss. And after you retire for a while, you're going to have a hard time figuring out what day of the week it is. So whatever you do, be sure you keep a subscription to a daily newspaper so you can always look at the dateline to see what day it is. And keep your body fit, keep your mind fit, and you'll enjoy your retirement. My last bit of advice is to learn how to procrastinate, because when you procrastinate, you always have something to do the next day. Congratulate you on your years at Home Federal and your retirement. Wish you a lot of luck.
Thank you, Joe. The next speaker, the one that was scheduled to be here, is not here. I'm sure he would need no introduction if he was. That is Ralph Fassel. I think to the people in this room, the name Fassel and Home Federal is somewhat synonymous. Ralph hired Sid, Ralph supervised Sid, and Ralph is still the chairman of the board on Sid's retirement. Sid is second only to Ralph in length of service at Home Federal. Ralph retired from, well, I was told he did, from active employment after 40 years, and Sid has 38. And he said if it hadn't been for the Roosevelt thing, he'd have probably passed him, so it's hard to say. Last but not least, none other than Laverne Mormon, who has also been a co-worker since 1966. Laverne came to Home Federal right out of high school, and she now ranks 4th on our seniority list at Home Federal. Laverne?
I'd like to say relax, Sid, but I know you're not as long as I'm standing up here. Am I right?
You're always right.
I guess I can say that I've probably known Sid longer than anybody in the room other than Mr. Benny or a few of the retired people. I'm really surprised with the power that Bernie has had. He hasn't done something about the situation of getting rid of Sid before now. I I received a copy of Mr. Purdy's retirement memo on April the 8th, 1994, announcing his retirement. And finally realized that the great effort put forth from the board and all the senior officers to have the fictitious newspaper articles about the merger between Home Federal and Roosevelt taking place, and the fake proxy cards that he's been receiving at his house. We've arranged retirement meetings to discuss finalizing everyone's 401k and the ESOP to make it all look very real. All of the effort has paid off, and we did get his resignation. You'd think he would have caught on when he saw his own memo of how it was written by Mr. Kuhlman, how nervously he was in writing the article. This is advise you of the retirement of Arvel S. Purdy, Vice President of Lending Operations at the Bellerive office. His date of retirement will April 22nd, 1994. Didn't you notice some tension in this, Sid?
I sent it.
I can say nothing but positive things about Mr. Purdy through my years with him. There's certain little things that has become memories of Sid. There's positive ones, but there's also negative out there. There's little things that I like to bring up with Sid sitting around, such as Francis Howe school bond issues, if you want to see him get excited. Something that can always be a positive to Sid is his grandkids. There's nothing in his heart that makes him feel more positive than to talk about his grandkids calling him Pawpaw. It definitely brings out the real Sid in him. Over the years that I've met Sid, I've learned what his favorite year was, which was 1843. His best buddy was Jack Daniels. And I do remember those Friday nights. If Sid Purdy would have saved all his money that he has wasted over all these years at Friday nights at the bars, he would be driving a Mercedes instead of a Honda. Is that right, Sid?
I probably wouldn't have any friends either.
Getting to know Sid, we all do have to agree that he is probably one of the biggest BS guys we have ever met. Am I right, Sid? And I probably worry about Sid on this as he gets into his later years. As full of it as he is, if his health does not hold out, and he continues to be that way, I've bought you a little gift, and I would like for you to open this. Would you like to step up here, Sid?
This is not something that's going to cause me to have a heart attack.
No, I would not do that to you.
Is this engineering?
Hopefully, if your health does fail you, you can lean toward this, and if you have any problems, it'll help you.
Is one a day or 2 a day?
And I have to say, all the years that I've known you, you've never asked me if I practice birth control.
Okay, I need this.
Oh, what is it?
Oh, this is over-the-hill laxative. It's got about a 4-inch piece of dynamite in it. With a short fuse.
The The other thing that I'm going to present to him, because as he gets older and his eyes begin to fail him and his mind's going to leave him, in order for him to be able to call his friends, I've made up some copies of the Roosevelt telephone number that you can put up by all your telephones, and I'm sure you have more than one telephone at work, so I made you some copies, or at home, that you can keep us in mind and give us some calls, and we'll be happy to join you on Friday evenings.
I'll be calling over there a lot.
We hope that you stay in touch. And the one thing that I would like to ask of you is, I would like to nominate you president of the alumni of Home Federal, to make sure that we do stay in touch and continue having some of our parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Laverne. It's the first I've heard of Alumni Association, but sounds like a good idea to me. Though that's the last of the individuals who are scheduled to speak regarding Sid, have had any comments to make. Is there anyone else who is here this evening that would like to make comments that we haven't scheduled? Other than Sid? Well, I've got one more.
I got a little story I'd like to tell about.
Okay.
I'm Tim Wisman. That's my wife Eileen. That's Doris' sister. And you know, Sid owns a house down at Terra de Lac, and Marilyn and Al owned one down there too. That's another sister right there. Well, they sold their lot, and Walmart stock went down when they sold. And if they sell, they'll probably go out of business. Well, anyway, they invited Eileen and I and Marilyn and Al down to the lake a couple of months ago. And so the next morning when we got up, we went downstairs, and Sid was sitting at the table having coffee, and Doris was in the kitchen cooking up something for breakfast. She had her nightgown on and her robe, which anybody that knows her knows she spends quite a bit of the day. In fact, Sid said sometimes at night when he come home from work, she'd still be there. Well, anyway, I got a cup of coffee and went and sat down at the table with Sid, and all of a sudden I noticed he was rubbing around on his face like this. And I said, Sid, what's the matter? Your face bothering? He said, no, it feels fine. Well, maybe he was using this aftershave stuff that Jack Palance uses. I don't know if any of you have seen that commercial. He smears it on and says, oh, it makes me feel sexy. Well, Sid says, no, he said, I feel fine. He said, I put that stuff on, and then a little while, he says, I feel like I'm about 15 years younger. And Doris, she turns from what she's doing in the kitchen, had a faraway look on her face, and all of a sudden it turns to a big grin, and she says, honey, maybe after you get retired, maybe you ought to start shaving before we go to bed at night.
Anyone else can top it? Okay, if not, I do have one more item. This is marked. I heard someone mention earlier about sneaking a chew here and there, and at Deer Camp in particularly, or on the way, that's Sid's first stop if he doesn't already have it, and we have to stop and buy some Red Man. So to get you started on your retirement, here's the first part. Now the worst part is that he buys this stuff and he chews it, and then what's he going to do? Well, he rumbles around in the back, and then he comes up with styrofoam cup, and that's his spittoon. Now you can imagine what that thing looks like after about an hour when he misses it about half time. It's pretty bad. So Sid, here's two temporaries. Then, so we don't have a problem, here's a permanent one that has a lid on it.
Yeah.
And you can
And you don't have to watch.
I guess if there's no one else that'd like to speak, we will continue with a little more of the serious part of our evening. Sid, there are a number of reasons why one is successful in business. One is obviously your wife, Doris, and we've heard a lot about Doris this evening. I've always been told it is very difficult to be the wife of a businessman or a successful businessman. And from what I've heard tonight, and what I've heard in other times, but what I've at least observed this evening, and in your case, it's almost impossible. We've always known that Doris has been one of your biggest supporters. I mean, you can tell the corniest jerks. You can tell one of the corniest jokes in the world and Doris will laugh at it, and I think that's a tribute to a good wife. That's a lot of support. Doris, if you would come up here, we thank you for your support of Sid and Home Federal over all these 38 years. I've got a small gift of our appreciation. I know where that trash bag is at, but I'm not sure about this other box.
Well, he's always under the skirts.
You're always under. There it is. We sincerely appreciate all the help that you've given Sid and all the understanding. Those Friday nights were a lot of work, and we did do a lot more business on Friday night than we ever did during the day on Friday. And it took a lot of help to get that. And I've got one other thing. I know that Sid, someone had indicated you're going to have Sid underfoot, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of jobs for Sid. And this happens to be a to-do list, and it's got numbers about this tall, and you can fill that out on a daily basis and keep Sid occupied.
He's bumming.
Can I remove Doris' skirt?
I've never spoken, really? Never spoken into a microphone before, and I hated speech class, but Sydney's been talking about retiring for so long, I just can hardly believe it's really here. He's got a good example by my dad, who worked the same place for 50 years and then went to work part-time for Home Federal. For 15 years, at 85, he finally decided he ought to retire, or 80, I guess he was. But like somebody said the other day, one of his friends told me the other night, when he retires, we'd have half the money, but I'd have twice the husband. Like they told you, I already got a time and a half, because he was pretty thin when we got married.
So are you.
Now he's really going to be in trouble. You can see yeah, you can see what our days are going to be like.
Counts for you tonight.
But we're both looking forward to it. He's liked his job and it's been good to him, but we're really looking forward to. I let him have most of his time at Home Federal for 38 years. We'll soon be married 40 years, and I hope now I'll get to see a little bit more of him. So I welcome his retirement too. Thank you very much.
Sid, if you'll step forward now, please. No, we don't get this. One of the things I would like to present to you is we had asked your friends and your coworkers to write some personal notes and well wishes on your retirement and also some advice regarding your retirement. We have those here to present to you. And also on behalf of the Board of Directors at Home Federal, in honor of your retirement and your 38 years, your successful years at Home Federal, I would like to present you with this honorarium that was voted by the board on March the 22nd of 1994. Sid, you heard from all your friends. I saw you taking notes. I'm sure you want the opportunity to retaliate, and you now have, you have the floor. 2 minutes. As long as you like.
Thank you, friend.
Here's the bags.
Well, what can you say? I thank everybody who talked here, and I believe everything you said is true. Let's see, I had one comment I was going to make about Tim there, but I better hold that off. But I want to thank everyone who came tonight. I want to thank especially those of you who said so many nice things about me. It's good to know that you feel that way. And I want to say a special thank you for David Carner and his invitation this evening. I appreciate that very much. I was a little bit saddened when I learned this morning that Ralph couldn't be with us this evening. Ralph hired me. I had an interview with him, and my thoughts go back to that time tonight because it's 38 years. I know it seems 38 years is a long time, but it just doesn't seem like it was that long ago tonight. At that point in Home Federal's life, why I think they were 5 years on the road, and there were 5 employees in the office, a small office, and I was the 6th one. And it was down on Woodson Road across from the Bank of Overland. I guess Joe probably remembers that building, and I don't know if anyone else is here that worked in that building. Things have changed a whole lot in our business, and I kind of remember when I went to that job, if you don't change jobs too much in your life, you only experience that so seldom. And it's kind of important to remember that when you go to a job that a person is new, that you go out of your way to be that person's friend on that job. And I've kind of felt that way about all the new employees that have come to Home Federal, and made an effort to be kind to them and speak to them and introduce yourself to them. And that would be, I've always felt that way, and I've tried to do that. So now I have looked forward to my retirement, as Doris has said, and everyone says, what are you going to do when you retire? I haven't given it too much thought. I have 2 places that need a lot of care. I like to garden, so I'm going to have a garden. And I like to play golf. I like to fish. And I like to hunt. So retiring at this time of the year with the weather turning nice, I think I'm going to be pretty happy. And yeah, I'll be happier probably if I stay out of Doris's way. And, I want to say one thing about that fishing deal where I was such a poor fisherman, David and I. One evening we came in from fishing, and this is about the 2nd trip, and it's true, we had been skunked, and they were making comments to us about our boat. So they decided they were going to invite me into the other boat, Bernie and this other fellow, John Schutte, and they were going to show me how to fish, that there was something wrong with what I was doing. So we pushed off from the shore. We were out fishing again, and first thing you know, John had one, and then Bernie had one, and I was in the middle. And John says, hand me the pliers. Bernie says, hand me the net. Somebody get me a worm. And that's why, I couldn't catch any fish there. They just wanted somebody to work for them. It didn't take me too long to figure that out. I didn't catch any fish there either, except maybe at the last second. Over all these years, I've made many, many friends at Home Federal, and I intend to stay in touch with everybody, all my friends at Home Federal. I'm going to miss the lunch that you referred to with my butterball friend. I do intend to do something about this belly that I've developed, and I'm going to, not having to eat lunch every day, I know it's going to be easy to lose some weight. And Mark, I think you're going to take it off too, buddy. So, there's another person here that I'd like to acknowledge. that's had 34 years of service with Home Federal, and we celebrated her retirement last Thursday night, and she's with us tonight. And I'd like for all of you to give Helen Clasby a round of applause and appreciation for her 34 years of service. I think I'd like to introduce my family. You've probably met everyone, but very quickly, if I can just take a few minutes, I'd like, you all know Doris, my wife, for, she said, almost 40 years. I've kind of forgotten to count, but I guess it is.
In December. Huh?
In December. And Joe, I guess we'll be going to Hawaii again, right? 40 years. And the guy who made everything possible had these 3 golden girls over in Overland. And anyway, his name's Walter Kleinstuber, 87 years young, I think, now, but in good health. He's with us tonight, and his guest, Burnell Thiel. If you would stand, please, Grandpa. Appreciate that. The next group that I'd like to introduce, if they would all stand at the same time, is Sharon, my daughter, and her husband, Rick. Steve, my son. Dane and Sheila, his wife, and Douglas and Lisa, his wife. They're all with us tonight. Two favorite guys in my life are my brothers, Frank and Carol. Frank and his wife Joan are with us, and Carol and Patty. If they would stand, please. They're in the And then the Golden Girls, the other 2 are with us. That's Eileen and Tim Wisman, and Marilyn and Al Mertz. If they would stand, please. They're always getting them confused. They think everyone is Doris's older sister. What was it they said one time? Was one of them was your mother, right? But Eileen is retired from Community Federal. She worked over there until Community Federal closed. And Marilyn was with First Nation Wide, and she's recently retired, well, about a year or so ago from there. So the savings and loan business is kind of in our blood. You have truly honored me and my family tonight, and I want to thank the directors and all of you for coming out to make this a very, very memorable evening for me. Thank you very much.
Sid, not only have you heard verbally from your friends this evening, but you just heard again from your friends. I think that says a lot. A while ago you were reminiscing as you started. You were talking about 30 years at Home Federal, and I'm sure that it only seems like yesterday that you started. Having been there 34 years, I feel the same way. And yet tonight, it's almost in an instant, it feels like that it's gone. And after 38 years, you think, well, how do you measure your success? What have you accomplished? And I've heard that you really are what you are and what you have done and what you have accomplished. And I think your friends have attested to this. How you're perceived by your friends is really what you are and what you've been. We are all moved by your dedication to service and your dedication to Home Federal and your dedication to your friends. And as you leave here this evening, we all wish you the very best of health and happiness as you go forward in your retirement. Again, congratulations on your retirement. Thanks for all the fun times, and just thanks for being our friend. There's a guest book here. If anyone has not signed it, would you please take time to do so before you leave this evening? I'm sure that everyone's seen the photographs from the tall, thin, full-haired individual to what you see at the table. I don't think there's anything under these skirts. I think it's all gone.
Just dark.
Again, thank you for coming out, and the bar will still be open if you would like to stay a while. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you go ahead and get this out of the way?